Well, good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, February 4th, and you're watching The Breakdown, streaming live on the Black Star Network. I'm Brittany Noble. Thank you for joining us. Well, Border Czar Tom Homan says feds will withdraw 700 law enforcement personnel from Minnesota immediately. It comes a day after discussions between the state's top officials. The details on a possible de-escalation in the state have been the subject of a month-long immigration crackdown. Homan says the leaders in the meeting had their differences. One thing is clear. They all agree that public safety is their number one priority.
During my press conference last week, I reported I had productive discussions with various state and local officials, including Governor, Attorney General, Mayor Fry, and law enforcement officials about increasing coordination in a lawful way between the county jails and ICE to avoid public safety threats being released back in the community. While we had our differences, one thing was clear: we all committed to public safety for all who live in the Twin Cities. We have made significant progress under the direction of President Trump, working with state and local officials here in Minnesota, and I expect that to increase in the coming weeks. We continue to have discussions. I'll have discussions this afternoon. We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation. And I'll say it again. This is efficient, requires only 1 or 2 officers to assume custody of a criminal alien target rather than 8 or 10 officers going into the community and arresting that public safety threat. This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement. It's safer for the community, safer for the officers, and safer for the alien. This coordination also makes it far more safe for the Twin Cities. Arresting a public safety threat in the safety and security of a jail is the safest thing we could do. Further, less public safety risks are being released back into the communities, reduces recidivism, so local law enforcement can direct their limited resources to other public safety matters in their community. This is another priority of President Trump. The state prisons already cooperate with ICE on this coordinated transfer of custody, and we thank them for that partnership, and we plan to do more with them. I also want to reiterate and emphasize, we are not requiring jails to hold people past their normal release time for immigration purposes. We're not asking anyone to be an immigration officer.
Well, President Donald Trump signs legislation ending the partial government shutdown that began Friday at midnight. It funds several federal agencies, including Departments of State, Treasury, and Defense through the end of September, covering the remainder of the fiscal year. The bill only extends funding for the Department of Homeland Security through February 13th. That short-term extension means Republicans and Democrats will meet again to negotiate a longer-term funding plan for DHS. Also, the United States has deployed a small team of military officers to Nigeria. General Dagvin Anderson says the move follows his meeting with Nigeria's president in Rome. It's unclear when the team arrived in Nigeria. Nigeria has been in the diplomatic crosshairs of the U.S. following threats by President Donald Trump to attack the country. Trump alleges the West African country was designated as a country of particular concern, a congressional designation in the U.S. for countries responsible for religious oppression. The Nigerian government firmly rejects those claims. Well, former CNN anchor Don Lemon has his first sit-down interview since his arrest by federal agents in Los Angeles last Thursday. He talked to Jimmy Kimmel about this ordeal. Let's roll the clip.
Walking up to the room, and I press the elevator button, and all of a sudden I feel myself being jostled, and and people trying to grab me and put me in handcuffs. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We came to arrest you." And I said, "Well, who are you?" And then finally they identified themselves. And I said, "If you are who you are, then where's the warrant?" And they didn't have a warrant. So they had to wait for someone from outside, an FBI guy, to come in to show me a warrant on a cell phone. And by that time, I was like trying to, figure out what was going on to get my bearings, and they dropped all my stuff. My glasses had fallen on the floor. I'm like, I can't read that. So they had to pick my glasses up, and I read it, and still, what does that mean? So, and then there was a bunch of guys, and they took me outside. FBI guys were out there. I mean, it had to be maybe a dozen people, which is a waste, Jimmy, of resources, because I had told them weeks before, and maybe once or twice, that we would, I think my attorney tried to contact them once, maybe twice, that I could just go in, and it would have to be the folks who were just working there that day, and they wouldn't have to have all these people following me around.
It's more than just a waste of resources. So they grab you and they take you where?
Well, you're right about more than just a waste of resources. They want that. They want to embarrass you. They want to intimidate you. They want to instill fear, and so that's why they did it that way.
Lemon faces charges of violating a federal civil rights law after he entered a Minnesota church alongside supporters demonstrating against its pastor. Well, actress Gina Torres' Los Angeles home was burglarized. It happened while she was away. The thieves reportedly took off with more than $200,000 in cash and jewelry. Police say the suspects fled the scene before they arrived. Also, Black-owned whiskey brand Uncle Nearest is bankrupt. The Tennessee distillery will likely face foreclosure if the court hands control of the company back to Fawn and Keith Weaver. Farm Credit Mid-America of Louisville sued the company and its founders, alleging default on $100 million in loans. The lender is also seeking the appointment of a receiver to run the company. The Weavers are opposing the move, saying they're victims of fraud. Well, a video has surfaced of Democratic Representative Sidney Kamlager-Dove and Jared Moskowitz during a House Judiciary Committee meeting a few weeks ago. The two recently went viral after a fiery hearing where Moskowitz sharply criticized Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi. During his statements, you can see Representative Kamlager-Dove becoming visibly animated as she voiced agreement with Moskowitz. In his arguments, Moskowitz calls out Bondi for not appearing and avoiding scrutiny. He also took a shot at Noem, saying she should be fired or impeached by President Donald Trump. Take a listen.
And you all, when you need your FEMA money, you don't call Noem, you call Corey. She's a complete and utter embarrassment. By the way, every Homeland Secretary has come in front of this committee once a Congress. I'd like to know the date she's coming. When is she coming?
When is she coming?
When is she coming? By the way, do you know Pam Bondi has not come in front of this committee? Do you know she's the only secretary to not appear in front of a committee yet? When is she coming? What's the date on the calendar that she's coming? You know what? Let's make it easy. I want to make a motion to subpoena Pam Bondi.
Second.
To this committee.
Third, fourth, fifth.
How much are we going to weaken Article 1 of the Constitution while you guys remain?
Well, a new study by Charlie Health reveals male loneliness is a complex issue shaped by social and cultural dynamics. The idea concerning masculinity discourages emotional openness and vulnerability. Researchers also found that many men struggle to express their feelings, keeping them isolated due to stigma. In the study, 6 adults, Black men ages 18 through 29, reported feeling always or often feeling lonely that year compared to white men of the same age range. The research also revealed a strong link between loneliness, chronic health conditions, and obstacles to effectively managing diseases. Research suggests creating environments that are safe spaces for Black men. Well, coming up after the break on The Breakdown, new concerns about the future of our democracy after President Donald Trump floats an idea about elections. Roland Martin talks with a voting rights advocate about what's at stake. That's ahead, coming up on The Breakdown.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
I'm Risa Colbert, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
Well, today we are shining a light on those who are Black and missing. 19-year-old Connor Oldfield, who has autism, walked out in his pajamas and vanished. He was last seen January 24th in Plainfield, New Jersey, and now his family is pleading for your help. If you see Connor or know anything, you're being urged to call the police. You can contact them at 908-356-2969. With the 2026 midterm elections approaching, President Donald Trump is calling on Republicans to take over and nationalize voting. Roland and Cliff Albright, the executive director of Black Voters Matter, discuss this very dangerous idea.
The twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump again attacking our democracy and our voting rights. With the 2026 midterm elections approaching, Trump is calling on Republicans to take over and nationalize voting. The push comes as every seat in the House and 35 Senate seats in the Senate will be up for grabs. Republicans currently hold the majority of the House by one vote. History shows midterm elections often turn against the party sitting in the White House. 2025, MAGA pushed for mid-decade redistricting to gain additional House seats. Well, just last month, Trump warned Republicans they must win the midterms or he could face impeachment. This is what he actually said today. When he was questioned in the Oval Office about his nationalization comments.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas Take a look at Detroit. Take a look at Pennsylvania. Take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
I hope y'all notice he only named the places where there are black people in significant numbers. But he's been doing that since 2020. Remember, who did he target after he lost in 2020? Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit. That's what's going on here. It's clear. Cliff Albright, Executive Director of Black Voters Matter, joins us right now. Cliff, I don't understand why states are an agent of the federal government. Go to my iPad, Anthony. There's a thing, Cliff, that this idiot's never read the Constitution. The 10th Amendment states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The reality, Cliff, is we don't have federal elections. Elections are actually governed by states, state election boards, state law. Now, there are things that Congress can do, because when you're talking about presidential races, U.S. Senate races, congressional races, but even still, that's working in concert with the states. But you notice, he said nothing about Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, Nebraska, Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota. Oh, he made no mention of any red, white states.
Yeah, and to be clear, what's going on, Roland? And to be clear, you know, for folks that are watching, you may see some other clips, some interviews that have been done from some of these other Republicans where they're trying to clean up what he said. You got them out there trying to say he's talking about the SAVE Act, right? Which is bad enough, which is about, you know, trying to have voter ID in order to keep something from happening, which literally never happens, which is non-citizens voting. But that's bad enough. But they're trying to cover up what he said to say, oh no, he was talking about this other thing. And then he came back and doubled down. It was basically like I said what I said. And what he said is exactly what you played, which is that he thinks that they ought to be able to go in and take over these elections in these states. And to be more clear, really, he's just talking about certain cities in these states, as you correctly pointed out, when they tried to overturn the 2020 election. He was really complaining about Atlanta and Detroit and Philadelphia, right? All these black cities. And so this is consistent with what he's been saying. And what he does is that he runs these things up the flagpole. He'll say these things. He'll repeat them every now and then. He'll test out the reactions. And next thing you know, you got ICE agents outside polling places. He was very clear what he's talking about. So don't let anybody gaslight you and act like he's just talking about, you know, some vague concepts of election security. He is talking about federal officials going in, running these elections. And more specifically, what he really cares about is what? I think it was the last sentence of what he said, which is the count. He said, we need to be able to come in and do the counts. Now, here's a man who has cheated on everything in his entire life, including the 2020 election, and he wants to be able to control the counts taking place in these cities. Right. And we got to connect the dots, as I know that you have already, with the raid that took place, the stealing of the ballots in Fulton County just the other day.
Well, here is House Speaker Republican Mike Johnson speaking on the very issue. And again, listen to the BS.
Follow up on elections. The president says that he wants Republicans to nationalize elections. Do you agree with him? And do you have confidence in how elections are conducted right now, heading into the midterm?
We have thoughtful debate about our election system every election cycle and sometimes in between. We know it's in our system. The states have been in charge of administering their elections. What you're hearing from the president is his frustration about the lack of some of the blue states, frankly, of enforcing these things and making sure that they are free and fair elections. We need constant improvement on that front. I don't know what the ultimate solution is going to be. I'm not going to get ahead of the negotiations here, but I think that is something that's going to be a continuing theme here. It's something that we'll continue to push, and we hope the governors will insist upon that same thing as well. In some of the states, like in California, for example, I mean, they hold the elections open for weeks after Election Day. That's just one thing that bothers so many people. We had 3 House Republican candidates who were ahead on Election Day in the last election cycle. And every time a new tranche of ballots came in, they just magically whittled away until their leads were lost. In no series of ballots that were counted after Election Day were our candidates ahead on any of those counts. It looks on its face to be fraudulent. Can I prove that? No, because it happened so far upstream. But we need more confidence in the American people in the election system, and it's essential. And everybody, no matter what party you're in, should agree with that. The mass mailing of paper ballots or mail-in ballots and all the other irregularities that have haunted us over the last couple of cycles, we need to tighten that up. Now, the red states have done a lot of good work in that front, but it's the blue states that I'm frankly concerned about. So we'll see how the law is modified and what's changed, but I hope we can get consensus to get that done. Yeah.
Oh, so he's only concerned about the blue states, and when he complains about this, Cliff, first of all, he's a liar. Then he goes, well, I can't prove it. Yeah, you can't prove it because it doesn't exist. Here's what we know. Depending upon your state, you have some states that say, okay, your ballot, if you mail it in, must be postmarked by Election Day. Some allow a certain period of days for overseas balloting that actually takes place. What you also have that people somehow seem not to understand is that when you have some places where they don't count early votes until after 7 p.m. on that particular night. So different jurisdictions have different rules. And the Republicans don't want to deal with that. And it's like, oh, my God, it's like California is weeks after the fact. Yes, because, again, if you allow folks for mail-in, and see, here's the real deal. They hate the fact that, and this is what we know, they are on record. If more people in America vote, they stand a higher chance of losing. They want fewer people voting, Cliff.
Clearly, and I wish I had $1 every time one of them was caught on camera or some recording somewhere admitting as much, hoping that the weather is bad, hoping that, the voter ID does what it was designed to do in order to keep Democrats writ large, but more specifically Black and brown voters from being able to vote. Like, they've been very clear about what it is that they're trying to do. And in fact, if you listen to what in that clip, what Mike Johnson said at the very beginning, where he's talking about the states having jurisdiction over these elections, and he says the states have been running these elections. He doesn't say the states are. It doesn't say the states are supposed to. He doesn't say that the states are going to continue, right? He says the states have. I mean, he has not taken off the table doing exactly what it is that Trump wants him to do, right? Which is to try to federalize, to nationalize, or at least to excuse and turn a blind eye when Trump tries to do whatever he's going to try to do. And so this is a very serious situation. But we've, as we always say, we've got the power to do something, right? As voters, as organizations, as journalists like you. But we also need folks to be having folks who have elected power in some of these states, especially the blue states that they're targeting, to be very mindful, right? To not wait for November, whatever, and then be surprised if there's some attempt to try to federalize these and nationalize these elections. We need them to be taking some steps right now to prepare for that. Whether it's steps like, what some of the states are doing now. Tish James just said something in regards to ICE and the way that they're going to be monitoring ICE. But we've got to make sure that states are prepared to push back if there is any attempt to nationalize these elections. And we have to also keep in mind that it's not just blue states, because as I mentioned before, and as you mentioned, Atlanta is not a blue state,
no,
right? At least not yet. But they are very, Georgia, I should have said, is not a blue state yet, but Atlanta is a blue dot within this state that they very much want to try to take over. And that's what that raid was about the other day. It's part of a process by which they're trying to take over the Fulton County elections.
Well, tonight, Roland will discuss Fulton County, Georgia's federal motion to have the FBI return the seized 2020 ballot. You can catch the Roland Martin Unfiltered Show live tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern. Well, coming up after the break, we talk with Aaron Haynes, editor-at-large of the 19th and president of the National Association of Black Journalists, about shrinking newsroom diversity, what Black women voters are saying right now, and why who tells our story shapes our democracy. And have you come across a news story that deserves national attention? We certainly want to hear from you. Please submit your questions online. You can visit the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
What's happening? This is your man, Motown recording artist Kim. You are watching the Black Star Network.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Aaron Haynes, editor-at-large of the 19th and current president of the National Association of Black Journalists. Her reporting sits at the intersection of race, gender, and politics, and her leadership role with NABJ puts her at the center of conversations about the future of both journalism and democracy. Aaron, it's such a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us here on The Breakdown.
Are you kidding? The privilege is all mine. Brittany, congratulations on The Breakdown, and I'm just so excited to be here for your first week.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Tell us more about how you became the force that you are in America today.
Oh gosh, no, I mean, listen, it's interesting that I have these two roles that you mentioned as editor-at-large of the 19th and NABJ. This journey really started with NABJ. I was a young student journalist trying to find my way, and NABJ really embraced me. People who look like me told me I could do it. Got my start in the Black press in Atlanta, which is where I'm from, at the Atlanta Daily World, telling stories about Black people, about Black life, right? Everything from city hall to small business owners to parents and just the totality of Black life. And what that experience really taught me was that our stories matter, right? And that they are front page news, that we shouldn't have to justify that to anybody or any outlet, any audience, that our stories matter for the people who need us, but also as part of the larger American story, right? And so fast forward, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but 25 years later, really took a leap to start the newsroom that I now help lead, the 19th, which is named for the 19th Amendment. And really we confront the unfinished business of the 19th Amendment, making sure that people who have been historically unseen and unheard in our democracy have a voice, right? That we know they are part of the emerging democratic majority of this country. And so talking to them about the issues that we all care about, whether that is the economy or education or healthcare, immigration, all of these things, but bringing different types of people into the conversation, which I know is something that y'all care a lot about here. That's really the work that we do day in, day out. So I really feel like, where I am at this point in my career, where I am, leading the world's oldest and largest, advocacy organization for journalists of color in the U.S., it's just an extension of who I am and who I've always been.
Go and tell us a little bit more about the mission of the 19th and why this kind of reporting is so critical right now.
Yeah, it's also great to be with you this week because we are literally celebrating at the 19th our 6th anniversary. So in 2020, we launched basically because we felt like political journalism was too male and too pale, right? We know that women are more than half of the electorate, more than half of the population, and yet political journalism still frames, women's role in this democracy as some kind of special interest topic. We know that's not true. We know that women are helping to shape this democracy. We did that even before we had access to the ballot box, and we continue to do so today. And so what does it look like to center the voices of women, of LGBTQ plus people, of people of color, of the disability community, of caregivers, right? All of these people who we know are contributing to this democracy and who are making political choices so many times based on their lived experience. Bringing those people into the conversation about our democracy felt so urgent to us in 2020, and it's only become more so every single year. I mean, you think about issues from, the pandemic, which, happened 3 months after we launched, to, the fall of federal protections for abortion, to the erosion of voting rights, which are under threat even as we speak here today, and on and on. These are all issues that are so relevant to the people that we write for and about. And so I'm just so proud of what we've been able to build, to be able to tell this story, to be able to talk about our politics differently. And now I get to help to lead.
Brittany, can you follow up
where we are thinking about America's 250th anniversary and what kind of democracy we want to have, who's in it, who shapes it, and where we go from here.
Do you ever consider the talk about folks declining trust in media?
Absolutely. And listen, I mean, that is why trusted messengers matter more than ever. People who look like the communities that they are covering, a truly representative democracy, a truly representative press, those things are related. We know that, right? And so, NABJ was started to increase representation in newsrooms because we knew that legacy media was not covering the fullness of African-American life, for sure, but also of so many different communities across our country. We were only telling a certain type of story, and we were making choices about the types of stories that we were telling about certain communities. And so, what does it mean for people to be bringing a gender lens, a race lens, whether we're talking about age or class or where people are in the country? Like, all of these things matter in terms of building trust with the audiences who need honest and accurate information, right? But in terms of the choices that they are making, and frankly, they are making choices about where they're going to get that, trust is crucially important, and it's something that we can't take for granted. We have to go out and we have to earn it every single day.
Erin, I know that you know exactly just how many newsroom cuts we're seeing in this country that is shrinking diversity. Can you talk to us about what you're noticing right now?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, it's very concerning. we have seen, we've been seeing, a disturbing trend that is only getting worse over the last year, and that we are concerned about even in the early days of 2026, the erosion, the consolidation of media, and what that means, particularly for journalists of color who we know are being disproportionately impacted by these cuts. Oftentimes, we are the last ones hired. We know that this is not unrelated to the attacks that we have seen on diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Targeting things like race, things like gender, and the intersection of those, what that means, for our industry in terms of who is being lost and what that loss really means for what the coverage is in these communities. I also think about, the erosion of public media, which has, was under attack last year, and what that means in communities that may not have any other source of trusted information. Public media is a huge service, and a lot of our journalists are there as well. So, thinking about all of these things, like when you are eroding Black voices in journalism, that does erode trust in media. But I think what I would also say, though, Brittany, about this moment is just seeing the opportunity for so many Black journalists to really start to create independent media, to continue to reach the audiences who need us. Shows like yours, networks like Black Star. Obviously, we've got a new media newsroom in the 19th. People like Don Lemon, people like Joy Reid, who are striking out on their own on their own platforms and bringing their audiences with them, who still need them to deliver the information that they are looking for. So, even as legacy media companies are making the choices that they are making, I think that it is also an exciting time to think about what is possible in terms of entrepreneurship for Black media as well.
Let's go further. Why is it important for Black reporters not to be silenced, but to find ways to share these stories?
Absolutely, because our communities need us. They are depending on us to make meaning of this moment and to leave behind the most honest and accurate record of who and where we are as a country. Black journalists have always done that, right? I mean, from Ida B. Wells to Gwen Ifill to folks, truth tellers of today like Nicole Hannah-Jones, Adam Serwer, Jamel Hill. I could go on and on and on. Black journalists tell the story, and so many times we are the ones that are being clear-eyed. This is not about objectivity. This is about telling the most honest and accurate story about what is happening in this country, and who better to do that so often than Black journalists, especially because we know that stories of race, I mean, in this democracy, that is the unfinished business of our time. And that is, I mean, really, what bigger story is there to tell right now than that story? So I think that Black journalists have always been essential. 50 years after the founding of NABJ, our representation, our belonging in these newsrooms is more crucial than ever, and our ability to be able to tell stories and reach audiences must not be diminished, because it is too important that we continue to play the role that we have always played in this democracy and in our beloved profession.
Erin Haynes, the editor-at-large at the 19th and the current president of the National Association of Black Journalists, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us for The Breakdown.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations again.
Well, coming up in our Noble Spotlight, an organization on a mission to help young people in the foster care system grow beyond their circumstances. Stay with us. And folks, your support is critical to do what we do. You can support us via Cash App using the Stripe code in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can also help us with credit cards. Use the same thing. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle at RolandSMartin.com, Rolling at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And if you're old school, please just send us a check or a money order payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. That's P.O. Box 57196 in Washington, D.C. 200037-0196. Our goal this year is to raise $1 million by December 31st, and we really, really, truly appreciate your support. Stay with us.
y'all. Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Violent white supremacy is, quote, the most persistent and lethal threat in the homeland.
The greatest terrorist threat to the homeland is the homegrown violence stream, including hate crime committed on behalf of some kind of white supremacist ideology.
They are coming after everything in Black America.
MAGA and Donald Trump are specifically targeting Black America. They are going after the money. Attack Black Lives Matter. Attack critical race theory, attack woke, DEI. MAGA wants to defund Black America. This is a perfect example of their desire to completely degrade and de-emphasize Black people.
Hi, I'm Swing Cash, Basketball Hall of Famer, and you're watching Black Star Network.
For most college students, move-in day is a celebration. Families show up with cars full of supplies, hugs, and encouragement, a soft landing into a new chapter. But for hundreds of students aging out of the foster care system and heading to HBCUs each year, move-in day can feel a little isolating. Sitting in a dorm room with no family, no boxes, and barely the essentials that they need. Our next guest saw that reality and decided to change it. Tej Marcer is a Howard University alum, a 25-plus year Hollywood veteran, and the founder of Move-In Day Mafia, a nonprofit mobilizing volunteers to show up in a big way for students who need it the most. Tej, thank you so much for joining us here on The Breakdown.
It is my absolute joy and pleasure. Thank you. I love bringing people together, having a good time. And I was lonely. I had just moved here. And one thing led to another. Longer we were on lockdown, and I started graduations getting snatched from the hands of these grads who had worked so hard. And being an HBCU alum, I knew especially that these graduates were losing the pinnacle. And you being an HBCU alum, know our graduations are a whole different thing. And I wanted to do something about it. So we converted that virtual bingo game into the HBCU bingo experience for these grads. And we raised over $1 million in cash and prizes in less than 4 weeks. And we gave it away in a series of bingo games that the 2020 grads could play. So it made national media. And one of them interviewed one of the grads I was playing. And that's where I learned the fact that would change my life. She had aged out of foster care when she went to her HBCU. And her social worker pulled up to the campus and let her unload what little she had and then just left her. And until that moment, Brittany, I had never considered this population of students because that wasn't my experience. I don't know if it was your experience, but I had never thought about how these kids transition into college. And then I educated myself and learned that 70% of kids in foster care dream of college, 3% go, 1% graduates. That devastated me, and I resolved that I would do something about it. I asked God to show me what that could look like, and Move In Day Mafia was born.
So tell us why it was important for you to focus your work around HBCUs.
I come from an HBCU family, and it's pretty much all I've ever known. And, you know, one of the first rules of business, they tell you to niche it down. So for me, why would I go outside of the community that I already knew, and already knew that the kids that needed us are getting into some of the top HBCUs? And so I resolved that we would not branch out, expand, until we have a Move In Day Mafia chapter on every single HBCU campus.
So for people hearing about this for the very first time, what exactly is Move In Day Mafia?
So we show up on Move In Day. The first part, we show up on Move In Day. They have no idea of the surprises that are in store for them. So they've gone through an application process. They've interviewed with us. They've actually completed an exhaustive questionnaire. All of our rooms are designed by a professional interior designer named Nikki Klug of Nikki Klug Design Group, because it's important to me that these kids who have shared basements with boxes have what they want in their space. So that we've designed their rooms, we show up with everything, we set up everything, and then we reveal it to them. But that's just the beginning of our work. From then on, for the next 4 years, every single month, they get care packages of what they need. And it's not a situation, Brittany, where we just say, here, take what we are giving you, be happy that we are helping. No, every single week, every single month, they curate what they want. They have a choice in what they put in their hair, what they put in their mouth, what they put on their bodies, because it's non-negotiable for us to make sure they have autonomy. And so we also provide them mentorship. I just had meetings today where we're talking about what the transition of once they graduate, what that's going to look like when they're in full-blown adulthood. So we want to be a holistic package to surround them, because my mom, when I graduated, I could move home if I needed to. I didn't. But I could move home. I knew that there was always
And why is it important to include monthly care packages?
To take the stress off of them. Our babies are thriving because they're not trying to go to school and then work 11 jobs so they can buy detergent, or they can buy deodorant, or they can buy shampoo. We actually provide all of that. And what we have seen is, because they're not worried about those kind of things, they can go out and pledge. We got one student who has interned at the Tennessee State Lottery. Our babies are interning at Chase. One just got back from a semester abroad in Paris. One actually was on the coding team for the Princess Tiana ride at Disney. So these kids are really thriving because we've taken the stress of their basic needs off of them. And so one of the things that I love about our community that we've curated is that every month we do what's called Adopt a Scholar Week. And that is the week of the 14th through the 21st of every month, where our supporters, our donors, can go to moveindayMafia.org and shop the different lists that are broken down by schools that the students themselves have said, I like this kind of deodorant, I like this kind of shampoo, I like these kind of snacks. They can actually, we have bought wigs, we bought sneakers, we buy underwear, whatever the student needs, our community shows up during Adopt a Scholar Week and takes care of them.
And so there are plenty of ways that people can help out. They can apply to Adopt a Scholar, volunteer, or donate.
Yes, at moveindayMafia.org. If you hate shopping like I do, just go donate. We're using the money to buy their needs. During move-in season, we're going to need more volunteers to descend upon the campuses that will be moving in new students. Brittany, to date, since 2022, we have moved in 109 students across 28 HBCUs, and we ain't stopping no time soon. So if you want to volunteer for move-in season, we have virtual volunteering that happens. We pretty much are a volunteer-run organization. So we need people who are check writers. Go donate. If you need to be in the trenches, you ain't got a lot of money, but you got time. There is a place for you at moveindayMafia.org.
And for a student that may be watching right now that feels unseen or unsupported, what do you want to share with them?
So if you are going to an HBCU and you have either aged out of foster care, you've experienced unhousing, you've experienced, housing insecurity, or you're grappling with some severe financial hardships, go over to moveindayMafia.org/apply. Join the wait list so that you will be notified when applications open around April of this year for the 26-27 school year.
All right, Tej Mercer, thank you so much for joining us here on The Breakdown.
Thank you for having me.
Well, coming up next on The Breakdown, she shattered records, graduating high school at just 13 and law school at 19. But that's not her only story to tell. We'll have more coming up after the break. Plus, do you know someone in our community who deserves the Noble Spotlight? We would love to hear from you. Please share with us your noble thoughts. We'll be right back.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Welcome back. I want to introduce everyone to Haley Taylor Schlitz. She made national headlines as one of the youngest Black college graduates in the country and later became the youngest Black law school graduate. But beyond the records, Haley is now focused on how systems shape opportunity and how the law can be used to expand access, not gatekeep it. I want to introduce everyone to Haley Taylor Schlitz. Thank you for joining us here on The Breakdown.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yes. So let's get into it. I know you're an attorney, an educator, an author, even a public speaker, a writer.
Yes.
Take me back to 2016. You were just 13 years old when you graduated high school?
I was 13 years old when I graduated high school. I actually started a homeschool hybrid college style school when I was 11 years old. And before that, I was in public school. So that shift to homeschool hybrid style of education was actually the turning point for me. And from there, I was able to complete 5th grade to 12th grade in those 2 years from 11 to 13. And that's when I graduated high school. And everything else kind of just rolled off of that.
And before we show you off even more, Haley, tell us a little bit about your mom and how she worked to make sure that you became who you are today.
Yeah, my mom is one of the most influential figures in my life, but also in the medical practice. She is an emergency medicine physician. She is actually the one who decided to pull me out of the public school system and do the homeschool hybrid style system that we moved into. And actually, because of how influential that was on the trajectory of my life, my mom and I wrote a book together called The Homeschool Alternative, where we break down the entire process, what we decided to do and why, the resources we use that really impacted my education and learning, and advice for African-American families navigating the public school system versus other options for education. So she really was influential in how I ended up being who I am. But on top of that, she is very highly educated and gifted and put all of this in a concise format for other families to use as a resource.
That's absolutely beautiful. So in May of 2022, at just 19, you became the youngest Black American and youngest woman to ever graduate from law school in the history of the United States.
That's correct. Those are the two titles that I did achieve when I graduated and I hold right now. It is something that was never planned. Sometimes I get asked that, is this something that when you started homeschooling, you kind of did the math and figured out that this is what you wanted to do? And that was really not it. Actually, I was a major in chemistry when I started my undergraduate program, and I switched my major to education and decided to go to law school about halfway through my undergraduate degree. So this was something that really was catered education for me as a student, rather than about titles, but that is the title I hold after graduating law school a couple years ago.
And we're so proud of you. And then right after that, you took an impact year. Tell us what that is and what you did.
So no, and that's a great question, really, because we hear a lot, especially being Gen Z, I've heard a lot about gap years and really trying to take time to find yourself and find what you want to do with your life and find who you are. And I'm a firm believer in you don't find your path, you make it. So I decided, instead of labeling it as a gap year, I wanted to market it as an impact year. And for me, my impact year was going in and into my community and being a teacher. I switched my major, like I said, from chemistry to education, and I decided to teach 5th grade social studies for a couple years before practicing as an attorney in Minnesota now. And that was time where I was able to give back to my community, develop myself as an individual, follow my passions in education and teaching, and set me up for future policies that I want to write with my own experiences, and nonetheless still be moving forward and progressing overall in my career. So I really want to encourage others who are young and think, oh, I'm going to find myself if I just wait 1 or 2 years, to do something active, to give back to your community. And in that, you may end up building yourself into something even greater than you could have imagined.
And so you actually ran for and you were elected the youngest delegate ever to the Texas Democratic Party convention.
I was, and that was very enjoyable. I have always been very involved in my community, very civically aware, and I want to engage and educate young people in my community to be aware civically and active. So I do a lot of that in my community in Texas. And now that I live in Minnesota, I do a lot of that in the Twin Cities as well. We just had our caucuses and we had a huge turnout of like 30,000 people that showed up and gave a couple hours of their evening to elect delegates for this upcoming cycle. And so even still, I stay super engaged in this because it is really important to me. This is how we see change and get our voices heard. And for me, a huge issue and something close to my heart is education and the education system and reform. But this is how we get heard in all spaces. And especially in the Twin Cities, it's very particular right now that we make sure that we stand up and stay engaged in this process. So I did start doing that when I was very young, like 16 years old. And even now, it's something where I see and feel the momentum of, change coming in the horizon. And that's the way to do it. That's the place to start.
Haley, tell us about the work that you did with the Texas Crown Act.
That is something that I'm very proud of because actually Representative Retta Bowers was the author of that bill. And we did a lot of work over 2 cycles to get that from not the first time around, it didn't even get a hearing. It didn't even get a chance to be heard. And then the second time around, it actually was signed into law. So the work and the momentum that went into making the Crown Act, and for anyone who doesn't know, it bans hair discrimination in the workforce and in classrooms, how important that was for racial equity, but also just for opportunity and thriving of students, especially in classrooms where it's one less thing that they have to be conscious about. And instead of focused on learning, you're focused on your hair and making sure it's an appropriate style. In Texas, it was really an interesting dynamic to work on both sides of the aisle, given the political environment of Texas and also where the Crown Act lands on the political spectrum, really having to work with people who the bill right before this was banning books and the bill right after this was some anti-DEI, but right in between, we were able to get the Crown Act passed. So there was a lot of work in between cycles. And that's really what I want to emphasize from that is, a lot of misconceptions are, I can't vote, so I really can't be engaged. But that's not true. There's a lot of work that happens in between election cycles where you can go from 0 to 100, just like the Crown Act did, even in a state like Texas. And that is things like being a delegate. It's also things like volunteering, holding your elected officials accountable, staying educated, raising awareness, protesting, all the things. And so that is what went into the Crown Act. We did education forums all across the country, but also all across Texas specifically in between those election cycles to make sure that it got where it needed to be in the second time around.
I'd also like to highlight that Haley was elected to serve as a delegate for Vice President Joe Biden at the Democratic National Convention. I also want to highlight some of the pieces that you wrote because, you're putting yourself out there. Talk about when the fight against hunger becomes a casualty of Trump's cruelty.
I've written a lot. I'm very proud to be engaged with Black media. I write for Insight News and the Hub News right now, and I'm very proud to be able to get my voice heard on those platforms and raise awareness. And the one that you just highlighted specifically is a column that I've written. I've written a lot of columns about the ramifications of the current Trump administration and what we're seeing right now. And sometimes it's things that go overlooked or things that are not talked about enough or things that you didn't even think would be a ripple effect. And so one of the things that I focused on in my writing, especially in the Black media that I write for, is how the Trump administration, how housing insecurity is rippling and impacting, especially young people, because I'm Gen Z. So that is a perspective that I bring to those platforms. And so things like food insecurity, things like housing insecurity, especially in between semesters in college or trying to figure out, paying tuition and paying for books and all the things in between from food and groceries. It really is a bigger picture than we realize. And so those are some of the things that I've written in my columns about the lived experience of Black youth. And especially under this administration, we're seeing a lot of dynamics overlap here. And some things, like I said, are things that people didn't even really think about, including food insecurity and housing insecurity. So those are things that I do write about. And of course, things like modern events and political topics as well. So I try to intersect my experience as a Black woman, an attorney and teacher, as well as Gen Z and modern events that we are seeing in the news now and bring all of that into one piece. And so what you highlighted is one of those columns that I've written. So if you're interested, you can go check it out.
That's good, Haley. One of the other stories I want to highlight is erasing Black history, dismantling democracy. It's all connected. What did you want us to take away from that one?
It is all connected. And as I've been listening to you in the show specifically today, talking about Nigeria, talking about, ICE leaving Minnesota, or part of the ICE here is leaving Minnesota. There's still hundreds left, but 700 are leaving Minnesota. We're hearing about just how interconnected all of this truly is when we see parks and exhibits on slavery being taken down. It is interconnected. And so again, what I try to bring to my columns is these perspectives and topics that are not discussed enough or not discussed in the perspective and intersectionality that I bring. And so for that, the erasure of Black history is something that we're seeing has been a long plot. Of course, in the history of America, we see that, but has been a very long plot, specifically under the Trump administration, since his first administration and in between and now, a long-term plan, and how it's connected to limiting voting rights, how it's connected to housing insecurity, like we were just talking about, how it's connected to the livelihood and the prosperity of Black Americans in this country, and how it's connected to ICE and what we're seeing, everything happening right now in the Twin Cities and nationwide related to ICE, and really how directly it impacts the African American community and how much power we hold in being able to change the trajectory of this. So that column was really writing about the what it sounds like as you captured it, the erasure of Black history, how that's looking right now in modern day, how it's echoing what we've seen in the past and things like the civil rights movements fought against. Coming from Texas, I'm very familiar with the erasure of Black history and things like book banning, things like curriculum rewriting, labeling slavery as involuntary relocation, for example, is something that Texas is trying to do. And that is just what some people might think of as just a phrase, really is a needle moving forward into the erasure of Black history. So especially it being Black History Month, it's very timely of a discussion. And with everything going on politically in the Twin Cities and nationwide, it really is something that I want to highlight.
And Haley, if you don't mind, really quickly, you got me feeling my age with this column. What's up with the Gen Z stare?
It's kind of what it sounds like, in the sense of it's when Gen Z is trying to process a response and bring it to light in a specific context or conversation. So a lot of the examples we see on social media is when someone is, making a comment that is potentially derogatory or racist or just illogical, and trying to process how to respond in a way that is minimizing controversy, especially if you're in your place of employment, but still being true to your morals, being true to what you want to say, being able to communicate effectively. So it is that kind of processing period between what you just heard and what you're going to say back.
So rightfully so, you have been honored by your organization. You're an SG role. Tell us how they honored you.
I've been honored in a variety of ways, and I really appreciate that they see the value in what I have to say and amplify my voice, because we are an international organization. I have been in the Aurora magazine, and my story has been highlighted, hopefully inspiring other students to be proactive in their education experiences and really look at opportunities that exist as families, as educators, as students. So that was very, very just fulfilling for me and very validating for me in my sorority organization. At our centennial, I was also on our centennial art. My graduation from law school, I put up our hand sign, and that was highlighted in our centennial art. So I was very proud of that as well. So there's just been a lot of ways that they have supported me, and Sigma Gamma Rho has completely changed the way that it completely shaped the person I am today. So I really am happy to give back to the organization however I can.
Haley, before I let you go, you got to tell our audience about your mom and the connection with Doc McStuffins.
So my mom's actually the mother in the cartoon Doc McStuffins is named Maisha McStuffins after my mother because of the work that she did in the community when that show first aired. It is the first cartoon that features a Black girl, in that case, in the STEM field. So she did a lot of work as an ER doctor, like I mentioned, in the community, saying we are Doc McStuffins, made a collage, brought Black doctors from all over the globe together at a conference to celebrate the Doc McStuffins cartoon and emphasize how important it is and how we see it and how it will shape generations to come, being able to see Black girls placed in a light of STEM, of critical thinking, and of being a scientist. And in that case, she wanted to be a doctor like her mother. And so it really was a celebration, and Disney noticed and brought her on for a commercial, and she ended up being Maisha McStuffins, the mother in the show, ended up being named after my mom. So my mom does so much good work. Like I said, she is very gifted and has a whole website of her own. So if you want to check her out and get engaged with her, you absolutely can.
And again, in 2019, Haley and her mom, Dr. Maisha Taylor, published their own book. It's called The Homeschool Alternative. Haley, we want to thank you so much for coming onto the show and bringing all of your wisdom, just inspiring us here on The Breakdown. We're so proud of you.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, folks, if you want to represent the Black Star Network beyond the screen, there's an easy way to do that. Please head to shopblackstarnetwork.com. You'll find official Black Star Network swag from hoodies, t-shirts, crew necks, other everyday essentials. It's just a way to support the network and show pride in Black-owned media wherever you go. Again, that is shopblackstarnetwork.com. We want to thank you so much for joining us today on The Breakdown. I'm your host, Brittany Noble. You can follow me online, The Noble Journalist. Join us tonight for Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. It begins at 6 p.m. Eastern. We hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you again tomorrow.